All right, let's go ahead and get started. Good morning, everybody. So this is the training for the data validators on getting into My Gateway and into new longitudinal record viewer. Some of you may or may not have used My Gateway before, so we'll start there. We'll have Hannah doing that training, and then we'll jump into the viewer and have Grant doing that training on it. As we go through things, feel free to ask questions. Like to have this interactive. And then I will wrap us up at the end and kind of talk about how we are going to log issues and just walking us through that piece. So Hannah, I will turn it over to you.
Thanks, Adam. Good morning, everyone. This is Hannah Burseth, manager of the production systems analyst team at MyHIN. I'm going to share my window. Okay, I'm going to show you three options for accessing the new longitudinal record viewer through the My Gateway user interface. So starting by logging in to My Gateway. I'm going to enter in my multi-factor. I'm using Duo for that. You may have a different one set up for your account. So once your modules are turned on, when you log in, this is going to be your landing page. It's the patient viewer, patient search. So I'm going to show you this first of the three options for getting to longitudinal record viewer. In this population space, you're going to see what I'm going to call the acres data source. So you'll have a real-time acres data source that's set up here. I expect that you'll have one. If you happen to have multiple, then those would be available in the drop down here. So when you complete a search, it's going to be searching that acres data source that you've selected. So I can enter my patient's demographics here. It's not necessary to enter all of the demographics, but adding a few does speed up that search process for returning results. So by searching first name, last name, and date of birth, I've returned 2 results from my acres data source. By clicking the name of one of the patients in the results, I'm going to bring up the patient viewer. Patient viewer is going to have some more information about that patient at the top. It's going to display your care team as well as the care team members that may be represented across other acres data sources. And this also is where we have our link to that longitudinal patient record. I'm not going to click it now. I'm just showing you the path to get there at this time. I'm going to close that. Any questions on the patient viewer, patient search? All right.
Anna, can I have a quick minute? So if the patient is not on your acres, is there any other way to search for them?
Yep. So let's go over to manage acres next.
Sorry, are you asking if the patient is not on your acres for the validation process or just in general?
Validation meaning testing?
What we're doing, like what you guys are doing right now.
Yeah, so Amy,
I'm not doing anything right now.
Yeah, so Amy,
I don't have access.
Amy, we have real-time acres set up for you, so your ADTs will add them to your acres list. But if for some reason you've sent one and all right, we sent a lab and we didn't send an ADT on it, Hannah's going to show you right here how you can manually add that patient so you can see him.
Okay, so if I have a patient that I haven't seen yet and is coming into one of the offices and they're doing chart prep, is there a way for me to find them?
Yep, this is what Hannah's going to show you right now.
Okay, perfect.
Yep. Okay, so patient search is you're searching for pre-existing acres, right? You come over to manage acres. Again, and the acres file here is going to be pre-populated with your acres data source. If you give it a moment to load, it's typically going to preload the patients from your acres data source that already exist. Similar to in the patient search, you can search also by demographics to return the patient. You can also search for patients by relationships with specific practices, organization, or provider. Again, this is searching patients that exist in the acres. But if you have the need to add a patient that hasn't already been established through real-time acres in this process, or in the future through other methods of establishing acres, we can use this add new relationship option. So here you're going to enter the minimum, at least the minimum demographics needed to establish that relationship that are indicated with the red asterisks. So I'm going to enter another patient, one of our test patients that we've provided for mutual use. My information here. Right. I need to, at a minimum, I need to choose my a managing organization to use in that attribution. And it looks like I have everything filled out. I'm going to submit this query. And it's given me the notification that I've successfully added the relationship for that patient.
And what's
So
the
that should,
unique patient ID that's used or should be used?
for so what is the that unique patient ID?
Yeah, is that
that
if that's a required field, which ID
Mhm.
should we use?
So that is your identifier for the patient. So in the case of our three test patients that MyHIN has provided you, we have three predefined patient IDs that can be used. But for your own population, so for the real-time acres that are generated, what's going to be automatically inserted as the primary ID is going to be that first MRN that's listed in the PID3 of the ADT message. You are certainly welcome to define that unique ID in different ways, depending on the needs of your organization.
Okay, cool.
Mhm.
So is that a required field when you're adding a new person
Yes.
that's not on your acres? It doesn't matter what ID, you don't have to identify it, you just put it in.
Right. So you would put your identifier for the patient. So that would be the identifier then that we associate with your organization for that patient, which can have impact later on where we're doing identity resolution, right? We say, okay, maybe the demographics that you sent in are a little bit different, but we can tell more easily that this is the same patient because you've used the same ID for the patient in those multiple instances that you sent the information.
Okay, so for a new patient, doesn't matter what ID you put it in, and then at some later point in time, it will match up to its duplicate if there is one.
Right, like if you are going to continue using that identifier for the patient. Yep. Okay, so our list here of patients, so this is just our another way to get to that patient viewer. So similar to before, you can click on the patient's name bring up patient viewer. All right, this is the same information as we saw, overview of the patient, care team members, and then that link to the longitudinal patient record. Any other questions on manage acres? Okay, I'm going to move over to TOC viewer. So the transition of care viewer is a little different than the other two modules that we just looked at. Instead of being a view into an entire acres population, it is looking at ADT messages that matched to that population within the given time frame that you've filtered. So by default, it's going to give us 2 days of filtering. You can search by patients by their first name, last name, and date of birth. You can search for it by the sending facility, ADT notification type. But once you have returned results, you'll see that the information about the ADT from the ADT is summarized here. You can view a fully summarized face sheet of that ADT notification by clicking the view button. I'm going to show you this because it does look different than the current version of Manage Acres that you, or TOC viewer that you may be familiar with. So this is the new face sheet, one sheet view of the ADT, whereas before it was broken out into sections. You can download this as a PDF and also download an extract of the raw HL7 message. So this is the message as it originally was received and then transformed into this human readable format. Right? So otherwise, again, going to the patient name here, you'll bring up that patient viewer, which should be familiar by now, and that record, that link to the longitudinal patient record. Any questions on TOC viewer? Okay, thank you. I will turn it over to Grant.
This is Grant. So I'm gonna demo the hop from my gateway into the longitudinal record, also outcome healthcare. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes, we can, Grant.
Cool. So in this case, you have 3 patients that we're working with. So like Hannah was describing, you search for your patient based on an assortment of fields and your acres population. From here, you can open up that patient to see high-level information about them and their care team with the longitudinal record. So what this will do is we'll open up the longitudinal record viewer. And then here we have the concept of widgets or cards. So each card representing a different set of data points. So the first one being that patient card or patient widget. So high level information about them, other IDs. So here's what Hannah was describing as being that patient ID, and other things that we have on them. Moving down is we have encounters. So some of this stuff, we are making modifications to these widgets to bring in, for example, the location where this encounter happened. But going through here, you can see problems is the condition name, problem, condition, in this case being synonymous. Category status, onset. So the goal is to make this align with Viper as much as possible. And then any feedback on changes, please let us know. Medications, orders, and requests. Here, this particular patient doesn't have any insurance or a diagnostic. Lab results would be here. Some of the lab results you are able to click on. This particular one doesn't have any data for that. Procedures, clinical notes here, you will be able to download them. This particular one's not working right now, but you are able to view that clinical note in the viewer. Immunizations, vital signs, and then also care plans as well. I'm going to go open a different patient, but while I'm getting that new patient, is there any questions?
Are we gonna be able to download CCDAs from the new Viper?
You should, as one of the documents, you should be able to.
Okay, thank you.
And is that downloading them as a PDF or an XML?
I would hope both.
Okay. Let's do this one. Yeah, when that functionality is available again.
So Grant, when you come into this, are you able to go straight to the longitudinal viewer? Or do you have to go in through what Hannah displayed first and then go to longitudinal viewer?
You got the logins for MyGo for right now. Future iterations would allow hopping into the outcome viewer, I believe.
Sorry, I didn't quite understand that. So you have to go through what Hannah showed and then you can get into longitudinal viewer?
Yep, through my gateway and then into longitudinal viewer, correct?
So-
Yeah,
Are
Amy,
you asking-
that is how you're going to launch patients. You define that what patient you're going to launch and you have access to is in my gateway. So you'll go into my gateway, find the patient, and then launch the viewer.
From a button, or do you have to come back out to the front screen and get back in?
When you mean by button,
Well, from within the patient search, when Hannah was displaying, right? She found her patient, she did all that. And then when Grant got on, he came out to the splash screen and clicked on, I don't know if it was a different button or something else to get into longitudinal viewer. Is that the way it'll work?
he did the same process that Hannah showed you. There's 3 different processes to get into the viewer. And I guess, are you thinking through a single sign-on, or are you thinking for direct login users, Amy?
No, just what we've seen today. I saw Hannah got into it one way, is unless I missed a couple, but and then I thought, and maybe Grant was just getting out to get back in as himself. I'm not quite sure.
Yes, Grant was getting out to get back in as himself. So you're gonna get it, you would log in, find the patient, and then you would come up to this patient viewer, and then for really every time you're gonna be validating, you'll find that patient, select them, they'll open up, and then you'll click this longitudinal patient record button.
That button right there. Okay, all right. All right, thanks.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay. Adam, do you want to describe the process for how to begin testing?
Sure. Yep. So you guys currently have data feeds turned on to our pre-prod environment, and those feeds will populate your real-time acres. So they should give you all the patients you need. If you find one outside of that, like I said, you can add them the way Hannah showed you. If the other piece, we gave you 3 test patients, and those are for times that you want to do validation to see how your data commingles with another client's data. So we tried to provide, that the basic demographics so people could share a patient if they needed. There is no requirement that you have to do that. You can validate on any patient you would like, and that you currently send feeds on. So if you send an ADT on a patient, it should be there. And then the lab data will populate. Right now, we're going to start with ADT and lab data. And the radiology will come soon. And once that's available, we will let you know. So we can start with the ADT and lab, and then I will walk you through the process. If you find an issue, we want you to focus on that data validation piece. So, you know, is the data that's in your EMR, is it represented correctly in the viewer? And if you find that it's not, or something seems a little out of place or not clear, we would ask that you submit a help desk ticket. And hopefully you've worked with our help desk before, but if not, let me share with you kind of how to do that. All right, so our standard help desk link, if you click on the help desk icon, and this is because you're getting into the viewer from My Gateway, you'll click on this My Gateway request, and we created a special item for you to use for this data validation. This will be here just temporary while we do data validation, and this really kind of pulls these issues out of our production request tickets and gives us better visibility, so I can so the team can, you know, manage and track these and respond and make sure we're covered here. So if you click on this data validation, you'll see a set of fields that you can populate, and hit send. It'll create a ticket, and we'll use these to really reference, you know, our client seeing issues, are they not seeing issues, and if we need to have a separate call to kind of work through something, we'll pull that call together. But hopefully there's enough information in this ticket for us to be able to troubleshoot it for you. So we will later today or early tomorrow morning, your My Gateway accounts will be set up. Those modules will be added, and you can begin your testing, or sorry, your data validation. And we will let you know when that is completed and set up so that you can begin that process. And I will have the training document out. That should be out by end of today or early tomorrow morning as well. It's actually ended up being 7 pages. 7 pages of, you know, some screenshots of here's how to get in, here's how to, you know, click through to get your patient to get into the longitudinal record viewer. You know, I think once you've done it once, it's fairly straightforward, but we'll have that just as a help guide in case you need it. And again, if you come across anything that seems like, oh, I didn't know quite how to do this, or additional questions that you have, you know, reach out. More than happy to help.
So if we're all testing on a similar patient, if we do that on the encounters widget, there's no way to tell whose encounter is whose for the same day. Is that true? From what you said?
Grant, can you speak to that one?
Sorry, I didn't quite catch the question.
So when you're looking at the widget for encounters, the only thing there was the date. So if a patient has multiple visits on the same date or multiple encounters on the same date, which is completely possible, especially in testing, there will be no way for us to easily tell whose visit is who or which encounter is which. Are you able to pop into that? Will that be fixed before, for our testing at some point? Because I'm assuming we're going to have, you know, all this stuff is still being added. So if we can only test ADT and lab today, when is radiology planned?
Yeah, we are actively working on the radiology ones, so I don't have a firm date. I can give that to you as soon as we have a firm date. We'll share it. Like
a couple weeks, or I'm just trying to get the picture in my head here, because we get 3 weeks for testing from I'm assuming the last date of whenever the last thing was added so that we can test it. We get 3 weeks from that point. And then training, and then go live at some point. Is that kind of is that the timeline or the roadmap for this?
Yeah, really, we'll try to provide 3-week window for each data type. So right now there's 3-week windows for, you know, lab and ADT.
Oh, okay. So it's 3 weeks for each item. So we're going to have the first 3 weeks for lab and ADT, and then the next 3 weeks for radiology, and maybe the next 3 weeks for transcription. So 9 weeks of testing.
Well, it may be a rolling, so depending on when those pieces are. They might be at the same point. Dennis, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I don't anticipate 3 weeks duration for radiology and transcription. They're different than labs and also ADTs being, discrete stuff. So,
But
we'll,
no one is expected to go live until that point, until after that last thing is added and we have 3 weeks of testing and then training and then go live some point after that.
can't say that, but there may be a rolling go live where ADTs and labs go in and then others go in the portal.
Is that a choice that we have? I'm trying to figure out your timeline because that matters for us. And I'm sure everyone else too.
A choice. So from our organization, and we can schedule something, but we may go live with ADTs and labs in the portal. Then we launch to a viewer, then roll into radiology thereafter. So turn it on. I'm going to use this as an example just for sake of ease. Turn on September 10th, turn on ADTs and labs. Users have access. On September 20th, radiology will be there, I think.
So
that's
we'll
an
have
example.
the current Viper available for radiology and transcription until the new one is turned on. Is that how it'll work? So we'll have two. We'll have to know that lab and ADT are in one and radiology and transcription are in another.
Yeah, that's a good point, Amy. I didn't think about that. You're right. Because I know, like, even with the labs, it's said it's worded as after go live.
Yeah.
And I know when we talked about this, it was like you have to, there's a 2-week rolling window, and the end of September is like when you should, you drop the date of going live. Well, okay, we go live at the end of September. Does that mean our labs are turned on as well at that time, or is it after? Because if it's after, then yeah, I agree. I think that window of Viper being active needs to be longer than just 2 weeks. I think the rolling window should be much larger than 2 weeks.
I'm not quite sure how I can have 2 active versions and tell users, hey, if you need
Yeah,
this
I
stuff,
know.
go here.
It's
If you
kind
have
of that
that
part
one,
of
go there.
exactly that. Even that's why I feel like turn the feeds on the background. Then when everything is in stage and running, we know all the feeds are on. Then we switch. Right. I think it's more behind the scenes. Active feeds are getting turned on. Then for the larger customers, or just go and order whatever order you want to take. Smaller customers go first, but increase that rolling window so we can have feeds turned on in advance. No, I agree. It is, to me, that window needs to be expanded.
Take that back in turn.
Yeah, because if you open a lab and you can't open it from the widget, it's really hard to test what somebody's going to train on if it doesn't work. I'm just struggling with it.
I know. I mean, it would mine will be forced to maintain 2 systems, but I don't think we should be expected to. Right. I think it's more that back end data feeds need to be as well established before any sort of turnover on our part.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry, thanks for the training. This was enlightening, and I have to jump to another meeting, but thank you, and I'll look forward to the guide.
Sounds good. Are there any other questions at all? All right, wonderful. Well, thank you for joining, and you'll get an email either this afternoon or tomorrow morning, letting you know that you can begin your training or your data validation. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Take care.